Please lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very good. Do we have any comments from the audience? Seeing none, let's move on. Corrections to the agenda.
Yes, we do have a couple of corrections to the agenda. Firstly, we are requesting that the winter storms emergency response item is proposed to be added to the agenda as action item 6H. This item was brought to the attention of the district after the agenda was published and cannot wait another 2 weeks. This action requires a 4/5 vote by the board. So that's the first item, and then we have we are asking that item 4A be pulled from consent and moved to 5A. And we are also asking that item 4B be moved from consent and moved to 6I.
So you said A and B, right?
A to 4A and 4E are being moved.
Okay.
Actually, I'm sorry, that's 4A and 4C. 4C.
Okay.
And moved to 6.
Okay. And then were we going to move?
Yes, to add the emergency storms emergency item to action 6H.
Okay.
And that requires a 4/5 vote.
And then,
6G or 6H?
Well, it's moving because we're moving something
Oh,
off of
gotcha,
action.
okay,
Yeah.
gotcha, okay.
So the numbers get moved around a little bit. It's kind of like a jigsaw puzzle.
It is.
were
Dave's
we,
got it figured out.
were we going to pull 6E, or excuse me, 4E, and move that, or,
We're moving, actually, it's, so it's 4A is being moved, let me just double check, I'm sorry. 4A and 4E, you had it right, I had it wrong, not 4C, 4E. Move to 6I. That way they're in the right sequential order for approval.
so just A and E, right? Okay. Everybody understand?
We'll keep us on track.
I think I understand. If I screw up, you'll set me straight. Okay, so do we have a motion to approve the agenda and consent calendar with those two items pulled from consent?
I'll move the amended agenda.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Come on. All right, and that motion passes unanimous. Now we need to vote for the 4/5 vote to add the emergency item to the agenda. So that one's being added as under 5A. I'm sorry, 6H is the emergency response item that needs to be added.
I will move adding a new item on the winter storms emergency response to the agenda. We now item 6H.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
And that motion passes unanimous.
All right. Added. So normally we would consider those pulled consent items right now, but one of them we have to wait until after. So let's,
4A we're going to take now.
yeah, so let's pick up item 5 after item 6. Probably should have said that in advance, but we'll do that later. So let's go right to 6A. Can we
afternoon. I am here today to ask for authorization to purchase a replacement mobile office. To purchase a replacement mobile office for the one that's currently located in the rear of the admin building. That existing trailer has been in service for several decades, has reached the end of its useful life, and before we have another winter like we did this last season, we are trying to get a replacement in place. We don't have any records that that original trailer was actually built to current snow load, and it wasn't occupied over this recent winter, but now we've got 4 engineering inspectors and our temporary interim grants coordinator are all working out of that office. So we are in a bit of a hurry to get an order placed so that they can fabricate a custom trailer for us that does meet snow load requirements. And so I was working with Heidi Baugh, our purchasing agent, to utilize the state clearinghouse listings for pre-negotiated items, and we did get 4 quotes for those. The one that we selected is the one that can meet a delivery date based on their own schedule of October 31st. But in order to meet that date, we have already gotten them started on the design aspects, and with your approval today, we will be able to put in the issue the purchase order and put in the order to get them into fabrication. Do you have any questions?
Seems like $189,000 is a lot for a trailer.
Yeah. My understanding is that it is the custom aspect of this that requires the I think it's 110 pounds per square foot snow load rating, which is uncommon for a trailer.
Okay, but in my mind,
Yeah.
cubes in an office ought to be cheaper than kitchens, and
So we are all already built out in the admin building with all the cube space that we can handle.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, if I were building a trailer and
Yeah.
I had to equip it for full living, that would be more expensive, I would think, than equipping it with, offices. Their offices are super simple.
Right.
So I don't understand. 189,000. Did you get any other bids or?
Yeah, I think we received 4. It was 3 or 4, and they were all within a similar kind of
Really?
bracketed. This one was a little bit higher than the lowest that we received, but it also reflected a substantially shorter delivery time. The others all were saying it would be at least 6 months before we could take delivery, which puts us right in the middle of winter.
Just out of curiosity, I don't have a good sense of kind of varying costs. If we weren't looking for an expedited kind of order, and we weren't dealing with the snow load, what would that unit go for?
It has been decades since we've bought one of these, so I don't have a good sense of today what that might cost. But anything that we did bid right now would also have this snow load requirement. I expect in the next 6 months to a year, I will be back in front of you asking for another purchase, because this takes care of our current staffing needs, but we are anticipating that with refilling some of the currently vacant positions, we're going to have to shuffle people again, and we'll be needing a second trailer to house those people. So we'll hopefully have this, we'll have more time in order to make the fabrication and get it in place. So,
Does it include removal of the old trailer, site prep, all the other bells and whistles that we need to have taken care of as part of this?
We left that part out of it to keep the cost down, and understanding that our heavy maintenance department can support us in the removal of the old trailer.
And we've got this on the budget somewhere?
We do. We have
2 different spots.
Yeah.
A couple $100,000 in one and $100,000 in heavy maintenance alone to go ahead and fund this project. When we first started talking about this last year, none of us had researched mobile office space. I'm not sure if we have in decades, and so we really didn't know what to come up with. And I just threw out the number of $100,000 at the time we were talking about it without doing any research. But I guess with all the annual inflation costs that we've seen the last few years, I'm not that shocked by the $189, and I'm not sure there's any other cheaper way for us to get additional office space for 4 or 5 employees.
And
Go ahead.
We should have time with the next purchase to actually do a bid and see how it compares to these Sourcewell quotes that we got. And, we'll kind of, the proof will be in the pudding with that. But this time around.
What's the long term? Because you just said you may be in front of us again
Yeah,
with
so-
additional needs for office space. So I'm a little more concerned about the long term plan for housing our employees or office space, because it seems to me like leasing a unit or something may be more cost effective on the front end, especially if we have to do something different, right? Either add on to our building, do something more major. I would hate to invest in this unit and purchase it outright if leasing something could be a better option.
So we did research leasing options at the same time as we were pursuing this purchase because we had the same concerns.
Yeah.
You can't lease a snow load rated trailer, and because of the custom nature of it. And so we were finding nothing off of Sourcewell that even came close to what we were needing to make it through a winter. So here we are. To answer your kind of larger question about, this is intended to be a long-term solution for these staff. I think that last time we met as a group to talk about anticipated staff space needs, there was up to 12 possible positions that would be out there, which would be 2 to 3 trailers depending on what the positions were. And so we're right now the trailer takes up spaces in the parking lot, and we're talking about developing an area behind this building in a currently unused treed area where we can strategically position up to 3 trailers on slabs, dedicated slabs with the power and networking capabilities.
So our long-term plan is to put our employees in trailers?
Those employees, yes. Yeah.
The thing I would say is the cost per square foot does trouble me. In that, like, I do regulatory permitting and through a lot of lakefronts, and I've never, ever, for the richest man on earth, seen them pay per square foot anywhere close to this. Not anywhere close. And so even to Nick's kind of statement, even if we were to expand the building to square foot, I mean, it doesn't, it's problematic for me in that regard. And I appreciate everything you're saying in terms of limitations, so I'm not dismissing that at all. But you kind of see from and I'm sure you've vetted this in ways we haven't considered yet, but kind of that concern.
Yeah, that's why we have this discussion, we have tossed around the idea of expansion to this building and haven't taken it very far just because of the architectural complexity of this building. It wasn't really set up to expand in any direction with all the, roof pitches and windows and, how an expansion would isolate certain areas. So there are some concepts that we could look into before we kind of move to the next step. If you'd like to see us further vet alternatives, we can do that.
Just to jump in, I mean, I would be looking at, to your point, more of a sub-unit connected via hallway.
Yeah.
And I mean, you could get a off-site prefab build for $4 a square foot.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, granted, you're going to have grading and other connection, all the other things that go with it, but, 300 plus versus $4 a square foot, I think that just, it's a big deviation. And you have something more permanent, and I would, to the happiness of the individuals residing in those units, I would anticipate a fixed building would also be more appreciated from those people. Because having worked in situations in which I'm the one delegated to the temporary structure, that there is something that speaks within that space that also, I think, from a company morale and district morale perspective, that I think we need to take into account as well. No one wants to be stuck in that space. And again, not to discount what you're saying, but like to the long-term solution, look to, what is the price of a new build per square foot? Where would we put it? And not look to kind of reinvent the structure, but then have it as a side connected via hallway.
So we didn't dig deeply into the actual cost per square foot for office space in a permanent structure, but understanding kind of what this building, with the features that it includes, cost back in 2006. We expected that the trailer proposal would actually be the more cost-effective solution for this particular purpose, which is kind of the overflow office space, and ideally for staff that are spending most of their time in the field in the summer, and we're really looking to either give them a home base just for the summer season, or are looking for a wintertime office space for them. So those were some of the considerations that went into this sort of general plan. The immediate need is really to replace this trailer out here that we're concerned about housing people in for this coming winter.
Could we rent a construction trailer as every construction project, they have to provide an office space for the inspectors and whatnot. Can we rent one of those for 6 or 12 months and give us time to kind of figure this out a little bit better?
Yeah, so what we found with those leasing options is that those construction trailers that were available to us through the source well were not snow load rated. So we could do a bid for a lease that requires a snow load rate and see what we get, but I'm not confident that we would have that by the time we need it this fall. So.
How many employees are going to be housed in this facility?
So Lynn won't be out there over the winter, right? So by the time it actually is needed, we have 4 currently assigned. And then depending on what happens with this sort of executive level structure, there's the Water Conservation Department, which has 2 that may be joining them for the winter, depending on when the space that they're currently in is needed.
I mean, I would go more out of the box in the short term. I think the idea of being rushed into this, I would do a different plan. And I'm no disrespect, I would lease commercial space in South Lake Tahoe, which is not great, but I would do that over this winter, and I would do a 6-month lease, and then I would revisit and I would engineer a building that's going to address our future needs. That's permanent construction connected via annex, because it's $300 a square foot plus. Like for a temporary structure, that's just hard to noodle in any development project. Especially, and again, I wouldn't say it's great to have people off site, certainly, but it's there's office space we could certainly lease that would meet that need in the short term. And my office works remotely, and we do just fine. So I would throw that that idea back kind of at everybody.
I have no idea about the availability of office space locally, but if it is available, I think you're getting a little pushback because it's just $189,000. It's a lot, and
Feels like a lot.
what you get at the end of the day is a trailer.
Yeah.
That, so,
It'll be bomb-proof.
Yeah.
It'll handle.
Yeah, maybe you should start calling it a modular.
yeah,
I think you're right.
Is everything.
French name for it or something. Yeah, no, but, so I guess I'd like to propose that, well, I know you're under a time crunch to get this thing, if we were to pull the trigger on this deal to get it in place by October, but I don't know, Nick, you know this market a lot better than I do. Is there available space that?
Yeah, I mean, I'd just say in investment strategy, the one thing people said, don't invest in commercial space in Tahoe. It doesn't go up. And so there's a lot of space, people vacate. And I would say too, to the time, because I think that's an important point, would there be a mechanism in which, let's say, we looked and the opportunity just doesn't exist? Because to say I could guarantee, that we would authorize Dave kind of in absence of this to kind of, we vote if there's commercial space, great, and it works, it's reasonable kind of given, certain variables, a good option. And in absence of that, we could authorize Dave to kind of green light this before the next board meeting to get it running. So you'd have a few days to kind of check it out. And then then Dave can say, okay, we're going to move forward with the trailer because there's no options in the short term. This is what we have to do.
I think as of today, we have to kind of just go on the assumption that if we don't get the approval today, that we are definitely moving to another option, at least for the winter time. Because at least based on the conversation with the supplier was if they didn't have the approval today, they can't guarantee that October 31st deadline to get it in by winter time. That being said, I'm sure we can figure out another solution from the winter, whether it's, commercial leasing space, and maybe we could just look at some more construction type trailers. I'm surprised there's nothing out there that's not snow rated, but
Not through the clearinghouse list,
Yes,
which
it's
is
not.
our mechanism. Yeah.
but we can check some other sources. But
Yeah.
But I just want you to let you know that it was like today or nothing.
Right.
To get this thing done. Yeah.
Well, so I guess I would rather we do something different, some interim plan to get us through the winter and look at a long-term plan. I like what the board discussion on this. Chris?
Can I jump in real quick? Maybe I can help, maybe I can't. Slap me if I don't. It sounds to me like we need something for the winter. We're on a tight timeline here. So what if we rented or leased a trailer like you were talking about that wasn't the 5-foot snow load, but we could maybe get heavy maintenance to keep the snow cleared off of it during the winter, and that gives everybody time to look for modular setups or more investigation in trailer, but it also gets you something sturdy and safe. Now, when we get this other trailer, we can take a look. I can have heavy maintenance take a look about putting some hooks on it or something. In other words, so the guys can tie off while they're shoveling the roofs. And one, it helps satisfy you guys, but it also helps her get the building that we need. The trailer out here, I help move it from down here. It's not the greatest. She needs something right away. I agree. I've seen that trailer. I helped move it. I'm surprised it lasted moving it the last time.
Yeah. So I mean, if the board's direction is that we investigate other options and report more fully on what we find, I'm totally comfortable with that. We missed this opportunity, so we will have to do something different. Yeah.
I mean, is that solution viable? In terms of
the one that Chris proposed?
Yeah.
Yeah, and there may be others too.
Well, because I mean, I think if that's and I guess just kind of in your investigative work, what's kind of the lead time, or I don't know if you even went that far in terms of leasing, from when you.
When can we get delivery?
Yeah.
When we found that we couldn't get something snow load rated, and that we kind of stopped that path. So.
We'll look into the other options and we can report it back.
Yeah. And before we would go like renting office space in town, I think what I would propose that we pursue is, we have offices out at what we call the Santa Fe Yard in Myers. And they're of a similar generation as the one here. But we could take the time to have them actually, having an engineering analysis of them done, an inspection, structural inspection of them done, and maybe see, are there ways that those could be beefed up? Because they're a much more substantial setup out there. It's like multiple trailers that are linked together, and it's not currently in active use. I've always been concerned about having staff too far afield as far these particular staff, because we do need to have in the wintertime kind of more day-to-day communication with them and make sure that they're integrated into the body of the department. So this location is much more ideal than that, but that if you're not interested in this option, we can look at that.
No, and I'm a huge believer in a cohesive community and cohesive district structure, not $300 a square foot. Right? Like, I mean, like, everything has a cost to it, and if there's no way if this was a private business you would greenlight that. Just, no. You would have to come up with another option, but you'd never get that approved. Because it's such a huge cost per square foot to a short-term benefit when there's a better long-term solution if we can figure out a stopgap. Whether I think Chris is, and that's part of the reason I love this district so much, is jumping in with suggestions. But whether it's that or some other kind of mechanism or what you just provided in the short term, and then to your long-term goals, I would encourage the evaluation of where and how you would build, right? Even just at a very kind of beginning, kind of schematic level to see how it would, work out and what your square footage would be, where would you put it, the coverage, kind of all those good pieces.
Sounds good. So
Table?
we're going to need a short-term solution to get us through and to give you and the board time to act here.
Yeah.
Just we're kind of in a corner today, and I guess we're not going to go with this. So.
Understood.
So we're going to move on with no action on this item. Correct, board members? Anybody have heartburn with that? Okay. Let's move on to 6B. Megan.
Afternoon. Mine has potential money coming to us. So I'm here to talk about the Baldwin Beach Sewer Realignment Project. A little background on this is since fall of 2022, district staff has been working with the Forest Service and coordinating between our Baldwin Beach Sewer Realignment Project, which is currently budgeted for construction in 2027, and the Forest Service Taylor Tlack Creek Restoration Project, which is currently in design and planned for construction in 2025. The district's existing sewer main does have some conflicts with the proposed improvements for the Tlack Creek Restoration Project. And so during these coordination meetings, the Forest Service has proposed to fund an accelerated design for our sewer project. And so we've been meeting with them, and they have authorized entering a participation agreement that would fund the design, permitting, and environmental for the sewer realignment project. They would pay 100% of the design scope fee, which is about $500,000, in exchange for in-kind non-cash contributions, which would be valued at 20% of the total project cost. So the complete agreement is attached to the board agenda item. The second part of this is in order to facilitate that participation agreement and to get the cost for the design, we requested a proposal from Northwest Hydraulic Consultants and their sub Geosyntec to do the design, the planning, the design, and the permitting for the sewer project. And the reason we solicited a proposal from Northwest Hydraulic Consultants is because they're currently doing the design for the Forest Service for the Taylor Tlack Creek restoration, and then we also have a long history of working with them on design in sensitive areas, and we do have a current master services agreement with them. So that is kind of the gist of the project. So before I read the requested action, are there any questions?
The selection of an NHC for this work, I didn't see in the packet anything on their qualifications to do sewer lines and pump stations and that sort of thing? I know they do restoration and that sort of thing, but
That's where Geosyntec Consultants comes on board. They're more of the civil consultants, so they'll be doing most of the design as far as the sewer realignment. We're going to be evaluating the existing pump station that's out at Baldwin Beach and then also the force main. And then Northwest Hydraulics will be overseeing the project management because we do have a long history working with them, and they'll be doing all the environmental permitting part of the scope.
what was the name of the design consultant again?
Geosyntec Consultants.
Oh, there you go. Okay, yeah, so they're,
They're a sub for Northwest.
wait a minute. Just looking on whatever page this is.
The proposal. Are you
118
looking
of
at
the packet, it's got the
The
budget.
proposal.
NHC fee estimate 82,000, Geosyntec fee estimate 225, for a total of 506.
Correct.
The math's not adding up.
That doesn't add up.
Oh, there, I'm sorry. If you look over on you're on the table for the
Oh,
budget.
there's the,
On the right column, there's a placeholder for the pump station replacement, and that's something that we already have in our budget for a future year. We have to go through task 2, which is the sewer realignment, and then we're also going to be doing condition assessment on the pump station and doing some hydraulic modeling to figure out if it needs to be resized, the pump's resized, what condition is it in, and so we put a placeholder number in. So we didn't get a fee from Geosyntec to do the design for the pump station until we have a better idea of what that looks like. So that's what that 198,000 is on the far right column.
Okay. All right, and I guess Forest Service was paying for this, and they wanted NHC for the job. That's why we didn't go out for RFP and all that.
We have a long history of working with NHC, and we're comfortable working with them, but it does make sense to keep everything moving on the schedule that the Forest Service currently has, to have the same design team. They'll be doing some evaluations on the sewer right now because of the creek restoration and where they're channeling the water out there. I'm not an environmental creek restoration expert, but
it does sync up with that Taylor
Correct.
Tlack project a little
and that's
better,
why they
the
want to fund
restoration
it.
project.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To keep it moving on their schedule.
Other board members, questions?
no, I guess I can just vouch for NHC. I've worked with them in the past. They do really good work. They've been in the basin doing work for a long time, and so it's a good choice. I don't know much about Geosyntec, but yeah. I'm not sure if we need to clarify the amount that's going to NHC versus this placeholder or not, this 198. If that's necessary or not, or
That 198, like I said, is just a placeholder the district put in to get the full 506 funded from the Forest Service. We didn't, when we had the meetings with the Forest Service, we explained that we weren't sure what was needed at the pump station, but we didn't not want to have that amount in there and have to go back and either renegotiate a participation agreement. This kind of gives us the freedom to figure out what needs to be done and have the money available for
Okay.
us.
thanks for clarifying.
Yeah, can I just, how is that structured then in contracting? Is it like an option or what?
We'll do it as, we have individual tasks, so that's task 3. So when we do the task order, we'll probably have that as reserved, for future use once we go through task 2.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, if I can add to that.
Sure.
I think the cleanest way for us to go about it would be when we'll do a first pass at the task order that excludes that 198, and then we will amend the task order when we get to the point where they've given us a proposed scope that we agree with. So it'll kind of be a two-phase thing.
Yeah.
Okay, and just for my liking, a $500,000 contract ought to be competitive. I mean, we ought to be, but in this case, this was the Bureau, or the
Forest Service.
Forest Service's contractor that they're funneling. They've essentially selected their consultant, and we're contracting that on their behalf, it sounds like. But it just, to me, a $500,000 project, especially a design that is being done almost entirely by a sub, because the prime isn't really qualified to do this kind of design. It seems like something that we would go out on the street. But in this case, I mean, if our partner basically dictated this contractor, then I'm fine with it. If not, then I think we should.
It definitely came down to the funding and the availability that they had. I think it was that they had a chunk of money available, and in order to get it tied into the fiscal year they were working on, we needed to facilitate doing this.
If this were being completed on the timeline that's in our budget, then we absolutely would have issued an RFP and done a competitive selection of this consultant. But, you know, in order to take advantage of this opportunity for having this paid for by the Forest Service, we needed to find a consultant that could work on that timeline, and they got all the knowledge. So.
And just a commentary on the project itself. I think it's a good project in that it's getting the sewer line out of an inaccessible beach environment, and it's making it accessible via the road access. And so I think to whatever extent we can find other opportunities to do this with our sewer infrastructure, I think we should be doing that. And so this seems like a great opportunity to get at it. So.
Yeah, and it's definitely opening up more conversations for the other Forest Service areas that we have out there. So, you know, hopefully this is a successful project and we can form more partnerships moving forward.
Okay. Any other questions? And what is your desired action?
Sure, it's a three-parter. So the first is to authorize staff to execute the participating agreement between South Tahoe Public Utility District and the United States Department of Agriculture Forest Service Lake Tahoe Basin Management Unit for the Taylor to Lac Restoration Sewer Line Relocation Project. The second is approve the proposed scope of work from Northwest Hydraulic Consultants to provide design and environmental support for services to design the Baldwin Beach Sewer Realignment Project. And three, authorize the interim general manager to execute task order number 12 with Northwest Hydraulic Consultants in the amount of $506,500.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
Did somebody second?
I'll second, sorry.
Okay. Any
Giving hard
discussion?
time.
Any other discussion?
We have to approve all three, because those to me are like three separate actions, aren't they?
I'm moving to approve them all.
There you go.
I second to approve them all.
Okay. Let's call the question. All right, let's go to item 6C.
This board sings a really good rendition of Happy Birthday.
Let's wait until the end, after I've left. Okay, so I have a couple items this afternoon. So the item 6C is to discuss the salary for the interim general manager. So back in May, the board approved the appointment of Paul Hughes to the interim general manager effective June 3rd. But during that discussion, we did not talk about the salary for the interim appointment. And so staff is recommending that Paul Hughes be placed at step A of the general manager's salary schedule until a new general manager is hired.
And that proposal is prospective, correct? Or is it backdated?
Backdated to June 3rd would be, we would,
Yeah, I don't think that was
retroactive.
clear in the staff report.
I move to approve. Unless
You want me to read my action?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'll second that. This was a recommendation to the executive committee, or was it the AD-HOC executive, whatever it was, Shane and I. And so we agreed with this, and I just couldn't remember the backdating part.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
Questions? Paula?
The requested board action is, so in lieu of Mr. Hughes' salary as chief financial officer, approve salary compensation of $108.26 per hour for the position of interim general manager.
I'll move to approve.
And I'll second.
I mean, he is doing double duty. Really.
Very good. 6D.
All right, 660, that is me again. So this item is to request to approve 2 side letters between the district and the Stationary Engineers Local 39 Union. So the district's been working on a remote work policy, and we are ready to go forward with implementation of that. And part of that process is to work with the union to discuss the policy, the benefits, and the impacts of that. So as we met with the union, they had requested that we consider an increase to the comp time accrual for eligible employees. So comp time accrual is essentially the voluntary accumulation of overtime. So you can either be paid out your overtime as you work it, or you could bank it at time and a half to use at a later time, or cash it out at the end of the year. One way or another, we have to pay employees out on that overtime. And so they requested that we consider increasing that. So we came back with the proposal of changing it from a 60-hour comp time limit to 120. There's no additional cost to the district. It just allows for a little more equitable benefit to the staff, where remote work may only benefit a certain amount. And we've seen this comp time accrual increase in emergency situations so many times over the years with the weather events and aging infrastructure. We just have staff working a lot of overtime. And so
There's no fiscal impact on this?
It doesn't create an unfunded liability if you have a number of employees accumulating 120 and getting paid out. Yeah.
But eventually they have to be paid out for it anyway. It's truly just changing the timing of when they're getting it paid out. Instead of by pay period, it'll happen at the end of the year if they haven't used it as leave time.
So there is a time limit annually paid out. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So that's the first side
Other
letter.
questions, board members?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to kind of, and I support all, all the efforts that kind of went into the remote work policy, the engagement with the union and so forth. My concern really is that it's not going to actually solve any issues. I agree it's a very important first step, but I would love to, sooner rather than later, see how this is actually impacting people, both in terms of, field crews, in comp time, how people are feeling in that space, and kind of the equitable, kind of privileges people have within the district, but then also people that are in need, childcare, health issues, whatever, that we're allowing good staff members to continue to work here and providing kind of the work environment that is going to attract more exciting young people in the future as well. And so, again, really, really kudos to the effort to bring this forward. I know it was a long process, but I'd love to have something at some point defined. We'll do it one day, but no, we'll do it 6 months from now on June 6th, kind of thinking to revisit and look at all this again to make sure it's actually working. Because the development of a system that doesn't actually do anything is for naught, and I just don't want to. I want to make sure this effort is not for naught.
Yeah. And I think the policy is similar to what's happening at this moment, and to some extent. And I think we've all kind of talked about the future of the district is still unknown, and what does the next leadership look like, and what are they going to bring us as far as their opinions on remote work. And so, the baby steps. We got here today, so.
Right. Yeah. No, appreciate it.
Yeah. So that was the first side letter. And if there's no other questions, I'll just kind of go over the second side letter real quick. Should be simple. The second side letter is just adding language to the MOU referring to the remote work policy. So just that, you may be eligible, and managers have to adhere to the remote work policy for approval.
Was that, I'm just looking at the staff report, there's a paragraph K added. All the rest of the language was previously approved? Or was the board asked to approve that, or was that just done at the management level?
Is that on the side letter? Not sure what we're looking at.
Yeah, the new language that's highlighted in red is the top of multiple paragraphs under K.
Everything had been previously approved.
Yeah.
Everything had been, okay.
Yeah. So what'll happen is this, we'll just get a side letter signed off. We'll insert that into the MOU, and then we open up the contract. We'll actually change that red line language to be.
Yeah, so basically both letters had previously been approved except for the highlighted language.
Yes. Yeah, all that stuff existed already. Yeah.
So we're only approving the modifications to those previous side letters.
Yes.
Do you want to take them in order? Or would you like a motion to approve both, or how do you want to
Both.
handle
We'll
it?
just do both. How's that? Let me just find my.
I'll move to approve the
you want me to read
language adjustments in both side letters. That work?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Okay, I got one.
She
more.
wanted to read the action.
Okay.
Next time.
The third one is also in reference to the remote work policy. So it's simply the managers group is also a bargaining group similar to the union, and they are eligible for the remote work as well. And so for consistency, we are proposing adding the same language to their MOU that just refers to the eligible employees. Employees may be eligible for the remote work program as well. So just a short sentence into their MOU.
Yep, and I think we just approved that one as well.
And we talked about
Yeah,
this in closed
I
session. I'm
moved
trying to
both-
remember.
moved
We did
both-
have a
both
conversation
side
around
letters,
this.
so-
We met in closed session. It feels like it wasn't that long ago, but I believe it was like March.
Yeah, you went away around and came back to the beginning,
yeah.
and yeah, we're back here, and
so
it
I-
seemed to work.
Yeah. So I did add a closed session item today just in case that we needed to revisit this subject, but if not, we don't have to meet in closed session. Okay. I'll be back for a staff report. Am I done?
And happy birthday.
Oh, thank
Happy
you.
birthday, yeah. Whoa.
Wow.
Okay, let's go to 6F. Ryan.
Good afternoon. I have for you today an ordinance amending the section of the administrative code pertaining to our schedule of sewer units. So as you know, our sewer service charges are based on sewer units, which are an estimation of strength and flow of wastewater discharge. So section 4.5.6 of the administrative code currently contains the schedule of units, and it determines how sewer units are to be counted for different types of homes and businesses, so residential as well as commercial properties. And on the commercial side, almost all of our commercial properties, the sewer units are based on the number of drainage fixture units per the Uniform Plumbing Code. So the Uniform Plumbing Code is actually defined in our administrative code and referenced in this section of the code. So most of the commercial establishments, as I said, are based on those fixture units. However, there are some specific categories of commercial businesses that are calculated separately. An example is restaurants. The sewer units are calculated based on the number of seating at the restaurant. So that was, restaurants in particular are kind of a complex sewer discharging business, and so we've had studies that show that a relation between the number of seats at the restaurant and what it costs to treat that strength and quantity of wastewater that's discharged. So what the ordinance that I have for you today is proposing is that one of the special categories in the current schedule of units is laundromats. So we had a customer who approached customer service recently and was just asking some questions about how the sewer charges were calculated. He owns a laundromat business. Right now, the administrative code says that we're to charge laundromats 2 sewer units per washing machine. So this gentleman had 60 sewer units for 30 washing machines, and the monthly bill was right around $1,000 on the sewer side. So after I met with him, I started looking into a little bit of the history of where this had come from in our code, and it actually dates back to the original schedule of units, which was in Ordinance Number 34, 1958. So that ordinance at that time had the same schedule for laundromats, 2 sewer units per washing machine. So we did some additional research, and essentially modern washing machines are significantly more efficient, so the quantity and strength of the wastewater that's discharged is significantly lower than it was in 1958. This is something that's not regularly revised, and that the schedule of units in particular is not included in the rate studies that we do. That's more focused on what is the cost of treating basically the wastewater equivalent of a sewer unit. So this is something that during the staff review, we did a lot of research into what the discharge looks like in modern laundromats. Worked with our inspections department to see if they had any concerns. Just for some background, we don't require any grease interceptors or anything like that on these laundromats, and we don't have any concerns that there's an especially stronger wastewater coming out of them, and the quantity has decreased quite a bit with the efficiency of the modern units. So essentially, this ordinance would amend the schedule of sewer units to remove the section that specifically addresses laundromats, and by removing that section, that would lump them in with the section that addresses all other non-specified commercial establishments, and the sewer units for those businesses would be calculated based on fixture units from the Uniform Plumbing Code. So the Plumbing Code actually specifically calls out clothes washers for public use and associates each of those machines with 3 fixture units. Right now, 1 sewer unit is equal to 5 fixture units. So based on the current way we're doing it, 2 sewer units per laundry machine is 10 fixture units, or the equivalent of 10 fixture units. So this would change that from 10 fixture units per machine to 3. So it would be a 70% reduction. We believe that it's more equitable, and that the Uniform Plumbing Code adequately accounts for the strength and discharge or quantity of that discharge, because it specifically has a fixture unit associated with those machines. And this is how we currently bill most of our commercial customers, essentially everything besides motels, hotels, restaurants, and campgrounds. Are there any questions from the board?
So this,
And just,
Say,
yeah,
just so that information, how many laundromats do we currently have in our service area?
there are 6 in our service area. So it's a relatively small group of customers, but it will be a sizable impact on their monthly sewer bills.
okay, so it sounds like it makes sense. My question is, this was kind of a squeaky wheel issue. It came up, and I'm just wondering, are there other wheels that just aren't squeaking yet? I mean, are there other issues like this within our code that we're going to, piecemeal adjust this thing, or are you fairly confident this laundromat deal was really the only unfair issue in there?
Good question. And there was one other group of businesses that came into discussion on this schedule of units. This is essentially what determines how we bill for these. So I don't think that there are a lot of these in other areas of the code. But in the schedule of units in particular, the other one that we discussed is Section D is service stations. So that says that those are to be billed for 5 sewer units and an additional sewer unit per RV dump. This is also very old as far as the ordinance that put this schedule into place. A service station is defined in the administrative code as an establishment that sells fuel and also provides automotive services. So again, going back, this is a somewhat antiquated, and right now this category of service stations, we do apply that to all of our gas stations in town, most of which do not provide automotive service like they did at one time in the past. So this was something that we discussed, and we're going to need to do some more research on what is fair for these businesses. One thing that came into play is that if we were to kind of deschedule them basically and treat them like commercial businesses, they might have a bathroom and a floor drain. So they would go from probably 5 sewer units to 2 sewer units. But the one consideration was that the restroom they have is heavily used. So we were proposing to potentially look at doing more research on what kind of discharge we're seeing from a gas station. It's primarily coming from the restroom, since they're not using chemicals and things like they once were. And the interesting thing as a side note is that our mechanic shops in town do not sell fuel, so they're not classified as a service station. Many of them have 2 sewer units. So that was the other one that we talked about, and we're not ready to move on yet, but in the interest of fairness for the laundromat customers, since it's such a substantial difference in their bill, we wanted to bring this one forward separately because it was much more clear-cut.
Do we have an idea of the extent to which the laundromats that exist are somewhat modernized? They've retrofitted to include these more advanced water efficient type systems? Is it pretty much just a given that it's there's not like just envisioning this person with a
I think what the
laundry
thinking was
board.
is based on the life cycle of the machines, we were able to kind of estimate that they're at least new to a certain extent. And so most of the water savings and water efficiency in these machines has been around for a while, not since 1958, but for quite a while. And it's in their interest too to upgrade those because they use, especially as we started metering the customers and charging based on water. The other thing that we did do is look, so one thing that supports this too, as I looked at the water usage on these accounts, it's surprisingly low. It was surprising to me at least. So we looked at a couple of the laundromats. They're all kind of similar size, somewhere around 30 washing machines is fairly typical, it looks like, somewhere like 20 to 30. And the water usage at these buildings is somewhere around like 15 to 20 units per month. So our average single family dwelling uses about 9 units per month. So it's really not a lot of water usage. So that was something else that we looked at that kind of reinforced this idea that the quantity of wastewater is much different than it was at one point and really kind of seems out of line with how we're currently billing them.
Okay.
I thought Nick had a
Board members,
question.
any other questions?
I was going to provide one more comment to address your concern specifically, Dave, and just remind the whole board that shortly we will be contracting to do a new rate study for both water and sewer for the next 5-year schedule, so we can ensure that they're looking at our specific categories this time to make sure that it still makes sense how we're doing it.
Good, good.
Evan for car washes.
Yeah, I would just say, Ryan, I appreciate customer service looking into this and following through and doing the due diligence to recognize this kind of fairly sizable discrepancy and taking care of it. So thank you
Yeah,
for
that's
being
good.
responsive.
Good presentation. Thank you.
That's great.
Yeah, it was kind of fun looking back and thinking, where did this thing come from? And went back to Ordinance 34.
Wow.
Very good. What would you like us to do?
Staff is requesting that the board adopt ordinance number 587-23, an ordinance of the South Tahoe Public Utility District, amending Administrative Code Section 4.5.6 regarding the schedule of units for sewer service charges.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion? Let's call the question. Melanie.
Thank you.
Okay. Melanie, we added a 6H, but did we have a G?
No, 6G was, let me see, let me grab it for you. Let's see where we are. Okay, 6G is actually the winter storms emergency response. So that's the one we're adding, that got added by a 4/5 vote.
Okay.
And
Well,
that one is Paul's item, if Paul would like to, do you have the wording on that?
I have a recent one.
Okay.
Yes. So yeah, we wanted to make sure that this did make it on the agenda again, because we are still intending to run the reconstruction work for the Fallen Station through this emergency action, so we do need to keep it going. Julie? That's okay. Do you want to give a little update on what you told me about the Fallen Leaf Lake Station work that's being proposed for the future?
Yeah, so on the 21st of June, we held a alternatives, let me move to the podium. On the 21st of June, we held an alternatives evaluation workshop with the consultants, water systems consultants and HDR, to look into 4 potential sites for rebuilding the electrical and generator building out at Fallen Leaf Lake. Staff is pretty consistent in its views that we really don't want to rebuild in the current location, Avalanche Alley. And so we are continuing to vet the other 3 locations. Our preferred location is actually outside the gates of Stanford Camp, right next to their entrance. We've followed up with the Stanford Camp facilities manager. He's not super keen on the scale of the facility that we want to build, something like a 10 by 16 foot actual building with the generator and controls inside of it, having that located right next to their entrance. So we're continuing to look at what the options for a building like that would be at the other 2 locations, which are more in the heart of the Stanford Camp facility, away from Avalanche Alley, but it is kind of congested, and there's not as much elbow room, either, division from their guests or like just space to move in these other 2 locations. So staff is continuing to look at those sites. I've also talked to TRPA about what sort of steps we would need to take to begin construction on one of these alternative locations without going through their normal permitting process, and I will be submitting a email to their permitting division to work with Julie Reagan on basically an emergency permit for this work. So that is underway. And we can do this emergency permit through them because of the emergency response that you guys are continuing to declare. And then we'll start the design process, which will include like some potholing. We'll work with one of our local contractors at the selected site to gather the information that they'll really need to be able to finalize a pad design or a building design. And yeah, the ultimate goal, now I'm not sure whether we'll be able to get to this, but the ultimate goal would be to have at least the underground infrastructure and any foundation for a building completed by October 15th so that we could potentially relocate our temporary setup, which is currently at the original site in Avalanche Alley. We could relocate that out to the new site, and even though it's still temporary, have it better protected for the coming winter.
Any questions?
I'm just curious, in terms of your conversations with Stanford Camp, did you come up with any novel building design concepts to make it look kind of fit into the setting?
What's interesting is they are totally comfortable with us putting like just an electrical cabinet. They want it to be small, but I think that's their main concern. Unfortunately, small means that our folks are having to do their maintenance work out in the elements. If you went with a cabinet, our guys would be out in the elements. And so I think it's definitely a negotiation with them on location because we do want something more substantial to meet our operators' needs.
Just trying to get at, just make it look nice.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, that's all.
So repurposing that
So
old
not
office
a
trailer
cinder
would be a
block,
good idea.
not a cinder block building.
Okay, Julie, what is your desired board action?
I'll go ahead and read it, yeah. So the request for board action pursuant to Public Contract Code Section 22050C, continue the emergency action to respond to the winter storms emergency pursuant to resolution number 3242-23.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion? Let's call the. Very good. Now we'll go to item 5, which is to discuss the 2 items pulled from consent. Let's begin with 4A. Who's going to take that one? Julie? Is that you?
Yes.
All right. Shane had pointed out to us that we did not attach an actual contract amendment to this agenda item, and yet we asked you to approve the amendment. Typically, the language would have read, authorize the interim general manager to execute that agreement, because we haven't actually prepared it yet. So by pulling from consent, it's just allowing us to change the wording of the action, and staff, with your approval, will begin working on that amendment for Paul's approval. Any questions?
Shane, I think you wanted this pulled.
I did. Yeah, obviously, I just saw that, like, it wasn't quite complete, so I just thought it should be at least called out, at least maybe added or add to it, or I think where you're going with it's probably appropriate. I guess the other part of it is just it's more of a global question about our legal staffing and things like that. So it's more of my attempt to try to better have optics on what's going on, and so that's part of it too. So I just want to make sure I'm paying attention to our spending on legal fees and stuff.
Yeah, and this will make us a whole with our attorney's fees for the last fiscal year, basically through June 30th. We'll be coming back to you here shortly to fund the new fiscal year. Based on the increased level of legal effort coming out of engineering with, more, we just have more work going on, so we have more questions. I would expect it to be a little bit higher than it was last year. I think it was 30 or 35,000 was what we initially requested, and we ended up at 95 because of the mediations we went through. Right. We haven't landed on a number, but I expect it to be somewhere a little bit higher than 30 or 35,000 this year. So, just a heads up.
Good.
Yeah, I think I can. So the action would be to authorize the general manager to execute Amendment D to Task Order 13B in the amount of $20,000 for as-needed legal services with Best and Krieger LLP.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? Okay.
That motion passes unanimous.
Okay, for 4E, I asked that this be pulled, and it was really kind of a point of order. This item would approve the submittal to Caltran, or to CalPERS, that records the adjustment of Paul's salary as interim GM. And I didn't want us to approve that before we had actually approved Paul's. So it was just to put things in order. So I didn't have any problem with the write-up as it is, just the order that we were taking it. So I don't know if any board members need this thing
I don't know if I can support this one, Dave. I'm just going to be really honest with you. Like, I'm having a hard time.
Yeah. So if we're in agreement, I'll move that we adopt resolution number 3251-23, which incorporates the pay listing by position for the pay listing effective June 3rd, 2023.
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion? Okay. All right.
The motion passes unanimous.
That takes us to standing and ad hoc committees and liaison reports. Let's start with you, Nick.
Shane, quick question. I'm trying to recall with the not having the second meeting in June has kind of thrown me off, and I wasn't in attendance at the first meeting in June. When was the meeting we had with the keys? Did you already go over that?
It's on the agenda here.
Okay,
June
cool.
5th, yep, it was 3x3.
You guys did talk about that.
Okay.
Well, I have a summary of it that I'm going to give during the GM report.
And then we'll skip it
That's fine.
after that way.
I have a bunch of notes, and I'm trying to interpret what I wrote, but but I think one of the take homes on that is that we're getting some funding from El Dorado County Water Agency to help support the work on Tahoe Keys Phase 3B in terms of the site, or basically infrastructure assessment that's going on there. So that's something you're probably going to talk about.
I guess just to add to that, I think the cooperation with the Keys board members, very frank, honest conversation, and start really moving towards the direction of, seeing if this is viable or not, and really giving us the information we need. So the rest I'll defer to Paul. And that's all I have.
Kelly?
I got nothing.
Shane?
Operations committee meeting. Julie, you want to give us a summary? We talked about looking for.
Oh, that's not fair.
All right, let's see here. Right. Everything's great. No, there's some issues with cyanobacteria at Indian Creek Reservoir we're dealing with. We had some conversation around SB 1383, which is the new landfill legislation that's coming down, and it's forcing our hand at thinking about biosolids management. And I think we're still working with Bentley, trying to figure out what we're going to do with our biosolids. Hopefully we can come to resolution on that. We are still working on some of the water quality issues at Red Lake Lane, and it seems like we're starting to flush that in a way that is reducing the amount of, I think it's iron that we're dealing with there. And Abby Lloyd gave a really great presentation on our energy use and our energy baseline information. In fact, if there's any way to get in front of the board, I think that would be really informative. I think the information that she provided is, I think would be helpful in terms of our capital improvement program and identifying where there might be opportunities for reducing costs associated with that.
I think that was an excellent thing for you to report out on, because we wanted to gauge whether the whole board was interested in hearing that presentation. It was about 10 to 15 minutes, fairly succinct.
Yep.
And really covers
Who is it who gave that presentation?
our energy use, our different segments of our service.
Yeah.
Water, wastewater treatment.
And Abby is our AmeriCorps
Yeah.
intern? Yeah. Or Civic Sparks, that's right. Sorry.
Yeah, I would second that.
yeah.
Getting that on the full board. It was worth it. It's a good use of 15 minutes for sure.
And I think we're up at like 21 fire hydrants installed thus far, maybe even more since we've had the meeting. I don't know, Nick, you were there. Got anything else on that?
No, you're doing great. Keep it going.
No, and I don't know. I think people have seen some of the piping that's over here at the old post office location. So that is all going to go on the ground over here around the plant. And
Starting in earnest this week is our understanding. So if anybody stops in the grocery store, that's what's happening out there.
yeah, I think that's all I'm going to say. It sounds like the Barton Valve project's moving, or it's delayed, but something. I think something's going on. Do you want to say something about the valving that's going on over by Barton?
Progress in the last 3 weeks, and the city has begun their project. That was a concern from the operations committee, that we were struggling to get some of the apparatus that we needed to be able to proceed with our work, which was then in turn delaying the city's ability to proceed with their own drainage work. So I understand we're still working, but now it's working.
That's all I got, unless you have anything else. Still in Hawaii.
Any more, Shane?
Oh, I think that's it for me. Yeah, can't think of any. Oh, well, I'll let you cover the next two items. I guess we had executive just before the meeting here.
Okay. Yeah, we met, El Dorado Water Agency met on the 14th, 6/14. Yeah, we haven't met as a board here in a while, so that was just kind of an ordinary meeting, and nothing of note in that I can recall. And then on the 19th of June, the AD-HOC committee met to discuss general manager recruiting process, and then we met again today about the same thing. General manager recording. So.
Shane did a great job recapping the ops. I love going last because I can just say yes, right on. No, I think just one thing with ops is also we've been working out how to get lighten the load a little bit on engineering and get some of the operations side in there as well on a rotating basis, and just hear from some of our crews out there. I think that's going to help the operations committee also just hear what's going on out in the field, at the plant, Diamond Valley. So we'll be rotating that in as well. So that's good. Other than that, just in my El Dorado County liaison role, just trying to communicate with county leadership in Public Works, just to try to make sure our communication is good with them. It's really their communication is good with us. Just in terms of some of their capital projects, we ran into some issues on Pioneer with manhole covers and an emergency paving project, and just trying to make sure that, you know, we're in lockstep going forward, and trying to help that relationship a little bit. So that's all I got.
Very good. All right, let's move on to item 9A, GM recruitment update. Liz.
Can I give a quick board report? Sorry.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
And normally, you know, it wouldn't be a big deal, but I just wanted to kind of put this into the record. So I had a call today with the City of South Lake Tahoe Sustainability Coordinator, Sarah Letton. The city and Sarah had been leading an effort for quite some time to work with the California Public Utilities Commission, the CPUC, in regard to our existing tariff structure. The tariff structure is fundamentally what limited our 1 megawatt solar install. And I won't kind of bore the audience, but there's a lot of unique things that exist within our tariff structure that doesn't exist for anyone else in the state of California. You know, big state, so the CPUC board is now becoming aware of kind of the uniqueness of this, and kind of what the city's leadership is moving forward kind of to start to the process of developing tariffs that would work for our community. And so I was speaking to Sarah, you know, primarily in terms of kind of my, you know, the private development projects I work on, but also, you know, started touching on things from the district's perspective. And so obviously the 1 megawatt kind of limitation was brought up, and kind of increasing that to meet our needs. Microgrid, you know, the allowances of microgrids and the transmission of kind of renewable energy generated on one parcel to another were kind of the things I really had highlighted. This is really starting to kind of work itself out. I know that Sarah referenced she's going to bring it to the STZ meeting this week. So I just wanted to, you know, Julie and Shelley, kind of prime you with that idea as this is, you know, being coalesced. You know, you did such an excellent and dove so deep into, you know, everything kind of liberty and process for the 1 megawatt. And so kind of the guidance, if we're going to be crafting this world into the future, how we get to our sustainability goals, we might as well start building that in now, even if it takes us 25 years to get there. Let's get the rules set we need to eventually get there. And so any assistance you could have with Sarah in that would be wonderful, and thank you so much.
Just kind of riff on that a little bit. I did bend our CASA's, at the last CASA meeting, I talked to one of the people that has connections in Sacramento and the CPUC. So like to whatever extent, either through Aqua or through CASA, we can find pathways into CPUC and help just get some optics on some of the limitations that are being imposed, probably unintentionally, but if we can get some of these things reversed at CPUC and just to open up opportunities for us to do more innovative things would be good.
And sorry, just one other thing I think with that, you know, as we're, you know, working with the CPUC and the city and, you know, kind of those various different things, you know, when the city meets with the CPUC board members, you know, having district staff included would be really important. Had really highlighted kind of the benefits of how we're looking to do our system in terms of kind of, you know, plant operations, you know, the flexibility it gives us, you know, kind of day to day, but having, you know, a member of staff speak to that as well, I think would be really, really important to kind of the necessity of it for our operations. And so that's it.
So I was cool when you were saying that, you know, a couple of directors are engaged in this thing, but did you just say you want staff to get involved in the CPUC
Not
process?
so much. I would because the city has led the effort, you know, they're the face of it, it's easier that way. More so to make sure that our voice and need is just included within that. Because, you know, the city is operating kind of at their need, and you know how it, you know, we all kind of exist in, and that's why they're reaching out to all kind of partners like the hospital, the school district, and so forth. But just wanted to kind of bring that was moving forward and make sure that we included what our needs were, but fundamentally have the city, have the city and all that take the lead kind of for the obvious reasons. And so I would say very little kind of staff time.
Okay.
They already are working with Jeff Inge, yeah. Because
He's well aware of our, you know, situation too, so we could talk with him.
yeah, I mean, I would say, Dave, to to the staff thing, it really, I would say the commitment is kind of established, hey, this is what we need, almost kind of a letter documenting, hey, this is what we need and why, a couple pages is what I would kind of put it at.
Okay. Yeah, and that kind of cheerleading, I guess, is not that costly, but I just don't want us to stray from our mission too much. We're drinking water, wastewater, and to the extent we can generate our own power, if that makes sense, that's great. But to change, work at changing all the rules of power generation, to me, it's straying outside of our mission a little bit. We need to be.
I would correct you. Power is in our mission statement.
Really?
Yeah. And so that's why as we moved forward in kind of a city discussion towards the kind of municipalization of the system, having it already within our mission and processes made that a viable option.
Power generation is in our mission statement?
I remember because John had referenced it during the meeting, and it's been far too long for me to recall specifically. And I'll admit it now, I can't recall the mission statement off the top of my head. Or in correctness of the statement, I think what he said is the mission statement and our charter allowed for us to do it. If I could be more accurate to what he said at the meeting.
Maybe allows for it, yeah.
Yeah. But I agree with your sentiment, I think, with what's going on. But I would also say we're also the largest energy user in the community. And I work routinely on people that are engaged in processes, and they pay me to engage in processes, because if you're not driving the bus is driving you. And if you're consuming so much of a commodity and you have an ability to influence the cost and how you procure that commodity, it's a wise investment. We, to times fighting Liberty, since I've been on this board, every time Liberty had raised a rate increase, we're dedicating staff and other resource time to challenging that. We should get in front of things, and we should be proactive instead of reactive would be my thought process as we engaged in this. But wholeheartedly, I fundamentally kind of agree with your sentiments.
Very good. Very good. Any other discussions? Board members? All right. Liz, you're up.
Okay, so I just wanted to give the board a quick update on the general manager recruitment, because we haven't really talked about it as a whole. As I think you all know, we hired Coffin Associates to perform this executive recruitment, and we began the search on May 23rd, and the final filing date was yesterday, July 5th. And reaching out to our contact at COF, he had received 90 applications as of yesterday. And so he's screening through those and kind of finishing up the process. And the plan is for the ad hoc committee, so Shane and Dave, to receive a report sometime early to mid next week to see kind of the short list of candidates. And then we will meet with COF on Friday the 14th to hopefully make the final determinations of who will be interviewed for the position, with interviews being held on July 31st, which we got everybody on the calendar for, which is probably the hardest part of the whole thing. And then one main item that we'll have to work on in the coming days and weeks is the interview questions. So we'll be working with the full board on that, sending out kind of a menu of questions and getting your opinions and thoughts on what you'd like to see in the interview. I think that's it. That's kind of the gist of it. Unless there's any
Did you
questions.
say how many candidates we got?
90.
90 applicants.
90 applicants, no candidates.
And how many interviews?
So it's, we're shooting for 1 day of interviews, so on July 31st. Full day could go, it's really going to depend on what it looks like. Six is a great number to invite. It's a reasonable amount. It's a manageable day. Any more than that gets challenging, but we can do that. So it's really going to depend on the quality and
Shane and I think we can get it down to no more than 6 before they come before the full board. So that's kind of the objective. First, the consultant's going to narrow the list, and then Shane and I'll get together. What's that date?
July 14th.
14th, and we're going to narrow the list some more. And then
Do you remember?
and we
how
want
many-
in-person interviews before the board.
Yep.
So
On the 31st.
yeah, and we did talk about reimbursing candidates from out of town. I guess we got to figure out, what that short list looks like, whether anybody's traveling, and whether it's even an issue. But Shane and I were in favor within limits. So
covering travel costs.
Yeah.
I don't recall last time, and I know it wasn't 90. I know we didn't
Well, I
get
was thinking more how many we interviewed.
interviewed. Was it 5?
Yeah. That
Yeah.
Would you guys do
6 would be good.
Would you guys do a TRPA, Nick?
Well, Nevada requires public interviews and everything, so it was a very public process, and they only interviewed 3, I believe.
We'll do them on site in the boardroom. We'll just have one panel.
We did discuss pulling in an external, at least one external from TCPUD or NTPUD or the city or,
Which we did last time. We had Ken Payne from the.
So, yep. So we'll work on that in the next couple days.
Yeah, and if
It's a lot, just so you know, because when you're trying to narrow for a selection, it just gets pretty unwieldy, just so if you can go lower than 6.
Yeah, so once I guess, if you get one of those 2 general managers scheduled, maybe they could review the questions too.
Okay. Yeah.
Don't you think? Yeah.
Yeah. So after next Friday, hopefully we have some more information for the board. So you'll be able to get the full list and review those and have plenty of time ahead of July 31st. I feel like this comes so quick. Yeah.
All right. Any other questions for Liz? Thank you very much. All right, GM report.
Before that, there's going to be one more quick staff report from Chris Stanley. Recently, there's been 3 sewer-related incidents that we played some role in, so I thought it'd be a good idea for Chris to give you an update on that.
Go for it.
A lot on your plate, so I'll be quick. But he's right. A couple things have happened since the last board meeting. On Tuesday, June 27th, about 6 in the morning, 6:30, my guys got a call over here at the dog park, right across the street here at Tahoe. And there was sewage coming out of a manhole right across the street from the dog park itself. Inside is private. It is the city line. It is their private lines inside the park there. It comes out of the park, hits Tahoe, and goes down, which is still a private line. And so what we did was we went in there and looked at what was going on. The line was clogged. The manhole had backed up, and it didn't look substantial from what I could see when I went out there. It looked maybe like 40 gallons or so. Went over into a storm drain at the edge of the street also. That storm drain system, I guess, is confined to that park, so there was no way for it to get out, according to what I was told. So what we did was, my guys, we're going to help. It's the city, customer, whatever we can do. We're going to help the sewer is spilling. So my guys went out onto Tahoe. We figured out which manhole it was, ran the line, and the line in that park is a 6-inch. It hasn't been ran in years, so it was pretty bad. But long story short, we got it unclogged. They did try to find a camel. The city does have a camel, but they can't really use it on sewage because it has something to do with the Caltrans yard over here where they dump. There was no other camels available. They did try calling Alpine Septic and another, I think it was Tom Hain, to see if they could get their camel out there with no luck. There was nothing available. We went ahead and just sucked it up. You know, it's sewage. We're going to do what we can to help anybody. So if you get any questions about why our camel was in the park or anything like that, I did recommend to them that they should put that on a regular cleaning list every year. It was pretty bad, and hopefully it won't happen again. So that was one of them. I do want to say that working with Mark Frasina and the city, we're building a pretty good relationship like we were talking about earlier. We help them, they help us with anything that we need. So just so you guys are aware of that.
Just real quick, so anything from Lahontan on that? Are we clear, or?
We're clear, but
Okay.
they did contact Karen Bender and all the appropriate people that needed to be talked to. Karen Bender knew we were out there, so she has a lot of confidence in us. I don't even know if she came out or not, to tell you the truth. It was pretty small, it was confined. She knew we were helping and everybody was working together, so I never saw her.
I got to tell you a quick aside. My daughter coming back early from the bike park went right through that puddle.
Oh, yeah. You might want to clean it.
No, but I don't know if I'd ever seen my son or her brother more excited in his life. Like the jokes are still coming like on a pretty regular basis. So yeah, it was funny, no doubt. But appreciate the good work. But yeah.
Like I said, we try to work with everyone. When it comes to sewer, even private residents, if there's nothing available, we'll suck it up real quick. Also, last week, we had a contractor over off of Iroquois Circle out in Myers. We have an easement behind a house that they're building down at the hill. They were digging down there with an excavator and they broke our main, which was marked, but it was still broke. They did pump out of the hole into the forest a little bit. Then we got there and my guys fixed it, put a pump in there and pumped it into the next manhole up after plugging it. But it was a sewer spill. It was not our fault, but it was a break that you should be aware of on Iroquois Circle. We worked with Karen, everybody that needed to be involved, so far we're good. As far as we got it fixed, everything's cleaned up. They were going to camera it. But just another instance in case somebody comes up and talks to you about it. 4th of July weekend actually went very well, considering. It was pretty quiet most of the weekend. Monday evening, I did get a call down in Alpine County at the intersection of Diamond Valley Road and Highway 89, which is right there by the county yard. One of our air reliefs was spitting out water, or treated sewage, the export line there. It went across the street, but was confined in the dirt right there. It was not a big spill, but it is still a spill. The guys were able to get out there with a camel. We stopped pumping from the plant. They got out there with a camel, were able to suck it down, and we turned off the air relief. It was a 4-inch air relief, so we didn't have one at the time there just to go out and put another one on. We left it off, which is fine for a few days. They got everything cleaned up, contacted the people that needed to be contacted. But heavy maintenance yesterday was able to take that air relief, and it just had crud in it is what it was. Because normally on an air relief, you'll see an elbow that comes up and over, and that's where your vent is. If you don't have that, then debris or anything that comes inside of that vault is going to go right to that screen. And I think that's kind of what caused the problem. So heavy maintenance had cleaned it out, installed an elbow on it, and put it back on, and everything's good to go. But we did spill a little bit, but nothing major. Didn't hit any waterways, anything like that. It was contained right there. One other last thing that happened was Monday night. I don't know if anybody saw or heard, but a car hit one of our hydrants on Herbert and Highway 50 out there by the motel. Evidently, a lady was cut off, and she went right across our fire hydrant and landed on a electrical box of some kind. So able to get that the car off of that, and the guys had it back in service by about 8, 9 o'clock that night. So I know it's bad, but 4th of July weekend with as many people in town, I think we came out pretty well considering. So if you have any questions on any of that.
Thanks for the report. I appreciate
Sure.
it. Yeah.
I know how it is when you're out there and somebody walks up and hits you up about something and you're like, oh, yeah, I didn't know. But he was confident that you guys should know that.
No, I appreciate that. No, I did see your crew out on El Tahoe on the 27th out there, Simon and others.
On the sewer spill?
Yeah.
That was actually Jay Al Gore and Casey White.
Oh, okay. I thought I saw Simon out there. Oh, wait, where did I see him? Maybe it was over on...
Chris, sewer flows, water demands, did we have any abnormal spikes?
I'm sure there was. We had thousands.
Nothing
of
we
people in
couldn't
town.
control?
Nothing we couldn't control.
Okay.
We weren't able to start irrigating alfalfa in Alpine County because of the flows, but everything's bailed up. I went out there this morning. The hay's looking pretty good, and the flows have come down a little bit to where I think we're gonna start taking care of stuff. So significant no. One other thing, Bellevue. We have that gaudy looking Godwin pump out there. We pulled that out today. We're going to get that all cleaned up. The meadow's going down. We're not seeing any significant swanks in the flow going through that station, so, we decided let's clean it up a little bit. So
Great.
that's all taken care of also.
Looks like Steve had some info for you, Dave, on flows.
Yeah, so in my construction meeting yesterday, we talked with the plant, with the clarifier project, and flows said we're up a little bit, but not as high as we thought they would be, and nothing to take sample and plan it through what we're going to make it looking good.
Thanks. He heard it. You gotta get a microphone when you talk.
Okay. Back to you, Paul.
All right. Okay. First up is staffing update. Treatment plant operator is opened up due to a transfer to another department, and we did receive 19 applications and are interviewing 7 for that position a week from today. Underground repair sewer, there were 3 openings in that department, all due to transfers. 9 candidates were interviewed, and 3 offers were made, and all the candidates are currently in the pre-employment process. Information technology systems specialist, this opened up due to a resignation. Interviews were also held, and a candidate has been chosen, and they are also in the pre-employment process, and they're expected to start by the end of this month. Grant coordinator, we held interviews for that on June 20th. We did select a candidate, and they are in the pre-employment process, and we're looking to get them started approximately mid-August. They had a vacation already scheduled. And then the grant specialist, I think we actually reported on this last time, but anyway, we did fill that position with a woman named Jennifer Marshall, and she is starting next week on the 11th. And then the water conservation specialist, Shelley hired Lauren Benefield, and she started on June 29th. And she's very familiar with us because she worked with us last summer through the AmeriCorps program as a water educator.
It's definitely not a problem.
Yeah.
I think it's a problem. Yes. Turn it on, leave it on. Sorry. Okay, next is general counsel services update. The board held interviews with 3 selected firms on June 19th and ultimately selected Jones Mayer out of Citrus Heights to provide general counsel services. The board AD-HOC committee and district staff just met today before this board meeting to go over the proposed contract. And we do expect that to appear on the next board agenda, so on July 20th. And then we expect a member of that firm to begin attending board meetings, starting with the April 3rd meeting.
August? August 3rd?
What did I say?
April.
Oh, I'm sorry, August 3rd, yes. And we expect Jones Mayer and Gary and Brownstein, they will continue to work together to determine the best way to continue any outstanding special legal projects that Gary and Brownstein have been working on. Next, county paving projects, Pioneer Trail and South Upper Truckee. So last month we reported that the district was told kind of at the 12th hour that the county was planning to start this paving rather quickly, and they had failed to provide the district with adequate notice to prepare for the required lowering of our manholes and water boxes. Following that initial notice from the county, they determined that their contractor could actually do that work for us through a change order, and then that we could repay the county through a reimbursement agreement. Following that discussion, the news got better. The county has actually agreed to pay for the lowering of our infrastructure, and then the district will have to pay to raise it once the timing is appropriate for that work. So it went from really negative to positive. Yeah.
You have anything to do with that, Nick?
Good work, man. Get at it.
Yeah, all good to you.
Definitely not me.
make some phone
Good
calls?
job, staff. Way to work it.
Okay, next is the district annual recognition picnic. Once again, apologize for you guys not getting your invitations out until the last minute. But So we had our annual celebration last Wednesday to recognize employees that have met certain longevity milestones. We got a really good turnout and some absolutely amazing food prepared by a lot of our staff employees. We had several 5 and 10-year service awards, but then we had one 25-year recognition, and that was Rod McLean in plant operations. One 30-year recognition to Simon Cuevas in the water crew, and one 40-year recognition, and that went to Pat Dillman in purchasing, and he is our longest term employee right
Wow.
now. So yeah, we had a really, really good day, and then following the recognition awards, there was a pretty epic water balloon battle, and then somehow I ended up with a bucket of water on my head.
Championships.
Yes. So crew of the year was customer service, Ryan's department. And employee of the year was a member of that customer service department, Rachel Callis. All right, so last is Tahoe Keys water update.
Hey, Dave's gotta recuse himself.
Oh, yep. So Shane started the discussion on the AD-HOC committee reports. So we did meet on June 5th, and it consisted of 3 board members from the Tahoe Keys board, their contract general manager, Nick, Shane, Julie, Adrian, and myself. Adrian went through and described the scope of work associated with that Phase B of the engineering study, which will hopefully provide us an accurate condition and needs assessment of their water infrastructure. And we really need all of this information before any kind of rate study or property tax assessment calculation can be completed. This phase is anticipated to take approximately 13 months to complete and cost about $200,000. The El Dorado Water Agency has agreed to pay for 50% of that work. The Keys is going to have to increase their reimbursement agreement they have with us to fund the other 50%. Adrian is working on the amendment to that reimbursement agreement now. Once the Keys has approved the increase to that reimbursement agreement as well as the 3B proposal, and then we will agendize that same 3B proposal to be approved by this board. One question that we did ask during that meeting that several of us had actually wanted to know what the answer was say, for example, we get to the point where all of the assessments are done, including financial assessments, and it says it's going to cost X number of dollars to improve the key system through some sort of financial reimbursement program. And say the Keys board is satisfied with that, and they want to take it to their membership for approval. We wanted to know what was kind of that next legal step for the homeowners association, because we really don't know. And meaning, what's the voting requirement? And they actually said that they are not sure yet what the actual legal step is. We have a lot of interest in this because we've already invested a lot of time in this project and energy in this process. And we're hoping that we're not told that, it requires a 100% membership approval to pass this thing, or something similar, because we have a feeling that's going to be pretty tough to get. So the sooner we get that information back, the better. We did set a tentative date for September for a follow-up meeting, so we're hoping they'll have that info for us at that time. That's it.
Okay, we can. Any more you want to?
No, I mean, I think just with the keys, my concern has always been that they use this information that's being generated through these processes and flip it to a third-party source to take over their system. And so, just kind of the concept of any financial output, both in terms of real dollars or in terms of staff time, there has to be some level of reimbursement if the partnership isn't with us. And I conveyed that to them, and I think their board was supportive of it, but I just kind of wanted to reiterate that point, kind of again, knowing kind of how the agreement's being structured, but just to kind of say it aloud, I suppose. And that's it.
All right, we can bring in Dave. Any birthday cake back there?
Yeah.
Is there any birthday cake back there?
Just turned 40 today. 38.
29?
All right. So past and future meetings are in the agenda, and with that, we are done with our regular agenda. So we're going to go to closed session.